Hello, good morning and good afternoon to my friends on the East Coast, and welcome to the Office 365 US Partner Community Call for June, where we're going to be presenting the business value programs today. And I'm pretty excited for our call. It's kind of one of those things that we talked about maybe a year ago, but there have been plenty of updates. And, I think we probably could have done a better job of letting the partner community know about these important tools, and particularly some of the updates and how they fit together. And so today we're going to be talking about them. We're going to have Paul Shu take us through. He's the program marketing manager and he owns these programs. And so I'm excited to have him today to take us through that and explain how they can help you in your practice. So that's it, the agenda for today, business value programs. But of course, oh yeah, and we should have plenty of time for questions. So please, I really encourage you to go ahead and ask questions. And Paul's style is that he's happy to answer questions while he's going through those. And so feel free to just go ahead and put those in the moderation or the chat, the question window. And when there's an appropriate time, I will go ahead and give those to Paul. So if you don't see them answered right away, it's just because I'm going to have Paul answer them, and we will ask them over in the live call. So as usual, we wanted to just talk about our community and a couple of URLs, vanity URLs to share with. And if you're not part of our community, please join us. You may be on this call, but you may not know that we also have a Yammer group. I think there's about 2,400 partners out there. There's a lot of partner-to-partner interaction. There's great information coming from Microsoft, and you can get to that by aka.ms join 0365 Yammer. And I have posted the deck for this call up there already. You can find it in the files section. And so that's available for you. And then we have a couple of blogs. We have the US blog, and we also have the enablement blog, where we talk about our monthly theme. And then on that community blog, we have other topics that we introduce as important things that we want to be able to get out to partners and to share. So this is our last meeting together before the Inspire conference. So this is formerly WPC, and I really encourage you to join us as a partner. And if you haven't registered, there's still time to do that. It's not sold out the last time that I checked. And so sign up for those, and there's a couple of different events that are happening that I wanted to call this community's attention to. So if you've been there before, or even if you haven't, there's a really large expo area. And within that area, there's the US Regional Lounge, and it's in the Commons area. And that's where you can connect with those of us within the partner group. And I wanted to call your attention to some special meetings that we're going to be having, or kind of, they're called community huddles. And so you'll be able to sign up and meet with us and talk about how we can help with your Office 365 practice or answer questions. And really, the agenda is yours. You just basically have to go sign up for one of these slots, and there's plenty of spots there throughout the conference during those expo hours. And you can meet with myself, and also going to be joining me is Robert Gates. So it's kind of the face behind the community. So come meet with me and Robert is a cloud solution architect for voice. So I've ran a practice for a national systems integrator for collaboration, and Robert is obviously a voice expert, and he started his own Office 365 company. And so between the two of us, you should be able to get your questions answered and ask our perspective. You have to actually go to the US Lounge to sign up for that. So it's one of those things where they want you to come to the lounge to get your bracelet so you can see all the other things we have there as well. And then you could sign up for one of those slots. So I'd love to meet you. So please come on in and sign up, and we'll chat. Okay, and then one other announcement, and this is really important for anybody who cares about Office 365 security. There's some great content out here, and there's two things. One is we recently had a security airlift. I was there. I know Robert was there. And there was some really fresh content. You know that there's a lot new in Office 365 security. So between threat intelligence, advanced data governance, secure score, ATP, and on, we have decks that you can take, not PDFs, PowerPoints you can take and leverage as part of your presentations that you're making to your customers and consume this content. It's fantastic. And there are other specific decks that are helpful for you in thinking about and adding an Office 365 security practice either to your services or current security services or starting one up. So there's an IP kit there that you can get, and we've talked about Secure Score on this series before. And what it does is it shows you how you can take Secure Score and integrate that into a security assessment and leverage that. So that's what that IP kit is all about. So those two resources you can find at these URLs. So aka.ms/security partner. That will you can get a request to the external Yammer network. And so you'll make the request and it should be satisfied, within a few hours or a day at the most. And then the aka.ms Office 365 security files is where you can find that IP kit and also all of those decks from the security airlift. So great resources for you. And we're going to have a blog post coming out about that soon. We're just finalizing some of the URLs, and you should see that within the next week. And also look for a blog post by me coming out on the 20th, and I'm going to give you some recommendations for Inspire if you're attending there, and my second session recommendations, and I'll also talk about those community huddles. All right. Well, without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce Paul to you. Paul Shu, again, as I mentioned, he's a program manager for business value programs. And I'm going to have him take over as presenter and take us through the rest of the content. Paul, thanks so much for joining us today and sharing this important information from the community.
You bet. Thank you, Michael. Thanks for having me here. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the session where we talk about reimagining work. Now, before I go any further, Michael, just to a quick sound check. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, coming through loud and clear.
Awesome. And I'm also presenting, right?
Yes, you are. You're live.
Perfect. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for having me on this platform to talk about business value program. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about how we think about reimagining work, right? And what does that mean to me? Well, when I start to think about even just 5, 10, 20 years ago, the way we sell our products is very, very different from how we're going to sell our Microsoft solutions moving forward 5, 10 years down the line, right? We traditionally and conventionally think about selling in the sense that, hey, we're going to talk to your IT departments and we're going to sell them SKUs, right? And what we're finding macroeconomically more and more is that the business decision makers and our customers are holding the checkbooks, and they're the ones who's making that IT decisions a lot of times, or at least have some influence to it. So what we're seeing is we need to have a different way of talking to the BDMs, because let's be honest, we can't go into our BDMs and start talking about, hey, this is what cloud PBX is, and this is how many RAMs and how many gigabytes this is going to need. They're not going to care about a lot of that. What they're going to care about is what is the process efficiency that you're going to bring, and how are you going to solve my pain when it comes to my line of business, right? So this framework of reimagining work is something that we hold very dearly to. And this is the central theme to what we consider as the business value program, right? And this is where we create a framework to talk about, let's have a scenario conversation with the customers, and we'll go through what that means as well. But really, let's get to the heart of what is the pain point that the business decision makers are facing today, and how do we solve that? Now, as Michael mentioned, my name is Paul Su. I am the product marketing manager here in Office, and I help lead the business value programs. And one of the key themes that I do is I talk to partners and talk to sellers and help them become consultants and start listening to the customers more and more. So before we actually go into the demo itself, I do have just roughly about 4 or 5 slides, a handful of slides that I'll go over very quickly to set the framework up a little bit. When I think about business value programs, the slide that you're seeing right now is exactly that. So it's made up of something called the Value Discovery Workshop, or VDW. You're going to hear me say VDW more and more throughout the session. And then it's followed by something called the Customer Immersion Experience, which I know a lot of you have some experience with. Last but not least, there's the Value of Office Calculator, and this is your traditional TCO calculator where you can prove the economic value of why Office 365 is the best solution for you, for your company. All of these has something that's called the Total Economic Impact, or TEI study underneath that. The TEI study is done by Forrester, a third party for us. And perhaps for a lot of you out there as well. And basically, they sample 50 to 60 different customers and then use the data that they gather to come up with numbers that says Office 365 is a solution for you, and it gives you the quantification on why this is why the benefits outweigh the cost to switch into Office 365. So all of the business value program tools that you see here, starting from VDW all the way down to VOO, has the underlying factor of this total economic impact study. The way we think about Value Discovery Workshop, which we'll go into in much more detail, is it's a listening tool, right? You listen to the customer on what their current process is, and then you show them what it is that can be possible with Office 365. And the way you show them is through a CIE, right? You show them the art of the possible by switching. This is the process. This is the new process that can help your company become better and better. And last but not least, of course, you use the calculators to prove out the cost as well. Let me move on to the next one. The next slide is just a brief slide on how we think about the TEI study. I'm not going to go through this entire slide, but some of the benefits that you're seeing is based on the TEI study that we're seeing, there's 143% ROI, there's 11 months payback, there's 60% reduction in data breaches. So these are all the things that TEI, that Forrester had helped us sample out in the real world and come up with the value for us. And then we use these values to base our business value programs on. When we think about the business value program then, in terms of how and when do we present to customers which of the parts, we typically think about it as a journey, right? So starting all the way from the left where you don't really know who your customer is, or you don't know what the contact is, all the way to your driving consumption on the very right-hand side. And when we think about the business value program, right in the center of that journey. So right when you have a chance to deliver a value discovery workshop, you do that when you start to know who the customer is, and you gain your foothold into their BDM inventory, if you will. So in that middle of the process is when we start to think about, let's use the VDW to tackle their efficiency problems, and then we show them with CIE, and of course, again, at the very end, you use the VOO, the value of office calculators, to deliver the business value to them. Last but not least, this is my last slide, and then we're going to go into the demo. Why should I care? Well, some of the data points that suggest that come back to us right now is, as you start to use these business value programs, we're seeing the median deal size grew by 4x. We're seeing that the deals actually close 30 days faster. And not only that, the close rate increased by an additional 10%. So not only are you closing bigger deals, you're closing them faster, and you're closing more of them, right? So these are the data that has come back to us that suggests, hey, business value program actually works. And when you start to use these business value programs with the BDMs, it actually creates a really positive effect in the company. So with that said, that's all the framing I was going to do. Let me jump into a demo on this. Let me see. I'll go ahead and share my desktop. All right. You should all be able to see my desktop now. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take you through the journey of all the way from VDW down to VOO and how we think about using all of them and call out some of the best practices along the way. Now, all of you can actually follow me along if you want on your own browser. You can go to transform.office.com. By going to transform.office.com, you're going to get onto this page, and you can see that there's an employee sign in and then there's a partner sign in. So for all of you, you can click on partner sign in. As long as you're MPM partners, you should be able to get an ID and actually be able to sign in. So for me, I'm going to click on employee sign in, and very quickly you're going to get to this page where it basically gives you the dashboard. Now, some of the things to call out on the dashboard is it gives you a quick view on, hey, what is happening on your schedule that is coming up, right? So for me, there's a July 13th VDW that is coming up with this company called Contoso. This is a made-up company. I just put it in there to show that there's, it gives you a schedule of what's coming up next. It gives you some recent activities. And then there's some risk factor in there as well. The risk is something that is not showing up for me because I personally do not have accounts associated with me. But if I have accounts associated with me, it actually pulls a lot of the data from data lakes and third party to see, hey, what is the company, what is the customer actually browsing, and what are they downloading? And by using those data, compiling those data, analyzing them, you can see, hey, are they actually thinking about moving to Office 365, or are they thinking about moving to the cloud, right? So you can actually start to get a sense of what the customer actually wants. Now, of course, that is just a piece of the data. Right here at the bottom is where I can see all of the accounts. Again, all of these for me are made up accounts because I've been playing with them quite a lot. But this is where you can start to go in and actually start an activity with a customer. For partners and for new sellers, they don't have accounts. You can simply just add an account. So for me, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go into the Contoso test account right here that you see, and I'm going to do an add activity, and I'm going to select a value discovery workshop on the left-hand side. And by selecting the value discovery workshop, it will start to take me into what we consider the pre-workshop briefing information that's required. So right here you see employee count. Confirm the employee count. I'm going to leave it at 3,000. But the reason we ask about employee count is, again, as I mentioned before, with the TEI study, we basically have a bunch of different research that shows, hey, if you're a small customer, say you're in the SMB side of the business, or if you're a super large account, all of the costs and benefits should matter as well, based on industry, based on size of the company. So by putting in the size of the company, the employee count, it actually will help us narrow down what is that cost benefit analysis as you go through the process. So for me, because this is a test account and this is a trial, I'm going to leave it at 3,000. You can also upload a customer logo if you want to. I'm going to skip that process and click on next. Right here is going to ask you to add a new contact. So for me, I'm just going to put my name and say add. And the reason we do this is we've gotten feedback before that says, hey, we don't remember, but by the time you get to a year end, you don't remember exactly who you've done the VDW with or to, and who else should you target VDW with. So this gives you a very quick idea of who you've done it with and who's your primary contact within the company as well. So I'm going to put in my name for now and then click on next. And now it's going to start to ask me some more information about the company as well. Here you see there are 11 industries, all the way from banking and capital markets down to retail. Depending on the customer's industry, you select the right one for them, of course. But one of the other things that I do want to call out here is, as you select each of these industries, there's roles within these industries that are only applicable to the industry itself. So if I were to click on banking and capital markets, which I will, it's going to show me specific roles within the banking and capital markets. If you are looking for a role that is cross-functional or a horizontal role like a CEO or CSO, what we would recommend you to do is click on the commercial industry. Commercial is how we think about when we for a catch-all for anybody who is not part of these 10 industries, 10 other industries. Click on commercial, and you can also use the horizontal role as well. For this demo, we're going to use the banking and capital markets. And then you're going to see that I have different selections on the roles, compliance officer, down to your traditional relationship manager as well. One of the things, I'm going to click on compliance officer. One of the things that you're going to see throughout your entire VDW journey is these pencil marks. These pencil marks are also added feature to the VDW because sometimes you may want to be even more specific than, say, banking and capital markets. For instance, I've done a VDW before with an insurance company, and we don't have a specific insurance industry that's listed in the previous page. So I clicked on banking and capital markets, and the feedback I got was they don't consider themselves to be a banking and capital markets. So what we really did here is we created this pencil mark, and if you click on it, you can actually edit the industry itself. So for me, just for this demo, I'm going to go ahead and type in insurance rather than keeping as banking and capital markets. And you can see very quickly it's going to change the insurance. I can also change the role selection. So rather than calling it compliance officer, I can call it something else. I'm not going to do that. But rather, what I'm going to show you here is, now here are the scenarios for it specifically within the banking and capital markets and compliance officers. These are the activities that you can select, all the way from discover insights to identify trend down to maximize sales to impact your bottom line. And the way that we think about these is it's aligned to the pillars that Microsoft really holds dearly to, right? So when we think about discover insights to identify trends, it is part of what we consider the insights pillar. So you can see in parentheses, there's insights, trust, mobility, and collaboration, all four of these. So by selecting these, you're basically driving a scenario conversation and say, hey, Mr. Customer, Miss Customer, how do you currently do insights discovery, and how do you actually leverage those insights to identify trends so that you can make a business decision later on as well? So rather than talking about products and SKUs, we start to talk about scenarios with the business decision makers. So for this one, I'm going to click on this, and let's just pick another one. Let's do manage client privacy and security. So two of these. And you can see you can actually even edit down to the line item right here with the pencil mark, right? You have to stick with the discover insights to identify trends, but the way that it shows up underneath that, you can actually edit yourself as well. So I'm going to skip that, and I'm going to go ahead and come down to the bottom and show you this thing. Now, there is a lot of feedback around, well, Paul, when we start to talk to our customers, while this is good, we really need to know, if we're selling a specific product and we have a specific product already in mind, we need to know which scenarios to pick in order for us to actually drive that conversation, right? We don't want to derail an existing deal that we already have. That's a great feedback. So what we added over here is need help selecting scenarios. I'm going to click on this, try our SKU matrix. And basically what this does is it will open up an Excel spreadsheet that basically gives you what we consider all of the different products that we have in the scenarios that we're clicking on. So for instance, for the ones that I had clicked on, discover insights to identify trend, you can quickly see that, it's going to light up my analytics and Power BI at the very end, whereas it's not going to light up Cloud PBX for the right reason, of course, because you're not using this Cloud PBX to discover insights. So here it gives you a very quick view on what scenario you're supposed to select if you have a very specific product conversation that you want to drive. Now, again, that is not the way we typically want people to think about it, but this is an option for you to look at should you ever want to look at what is the underlying products for each of the scenarios. I'm going to minimize this and come back to this page and click on next. Now it's going to ask me, when are you presenting this value discovery workshop to your customers? You can schedule a future one, or you can use today. I'm going to use today, June 1st. And then subsequently, it's going to ask me, do I want to schedule a CIE with this? And this is something that is fairly new to even our internal sellers. We can actually schedule instantaneous, what we consider virtual CIE on the same day, and you can actually get an instance spun up right now, right here, if you want to do a virtual CIE. I will go ahead and click on yes, schedule CIE. And I will say, for which day should an instant virtual CIE be scheduled? I will use today, and I will schedule both. And what the instant CIE will do later on is you can then drive your VDW directly into a virtual CIE and say, hey, okay, Mr. Customer, here's all the things that we've talked about throughout VDW. Let me actually show you now what I mean in an instant virtual CIE so that you can see with your own eyes and you can play within the same sandbox with me and actually be able to see what is the effect of that, right? So here we go. We have now successfully scheduled your CIE and your workshop is ready to go, right? So I'm going to go ahead and start the workshop. And here is, by clicking on Start Workshop, here is where you will actually start to present to the customer. So all of the work that we've done before, remember this, that is the sort of that pre-brief things that you have to fill out. Here is where the rubber meets the road, right? So Contoso was the company that I had selected. It's hosted by me, and we're actually going to have the conversation now with the customer, right? So by clicking on Begin, you're now going to start this conversation. You can see up on the top, there's 4 chevrons right here. There's Introduction, there's HVA discussion, implementation priorities, and how do you actually get started. We'll go through all of these. Now, one of the things I do want to call out is, again, you're going to see throughout the VDW these pencil marks, just like you did before. These pencil marks allow you to modify what is on the page. So sometimes you may want to add an agenda item that says, hey, maybe I want to have a next steps, right? And talk about next steps, very pointed conversation with the customer and say, what do I want to talk about? So you can actually modify the agenda if you want to. I'm going to skip modifying the agenda and go straight to the next page, which you're going to see is a testimonial page. We always start the VDW with a testimony, and the reason is it just kind of reassures customers that, hey, this is actually something that works for other customers as well, right? You can actually, again, even go into our testimonial library and change this if you want to. So you see the pencil mark, you can search for the banking industry quotes, or you can search for other quotes if you want for other countries, and you can actually swap the testimony here if you want to. Again, I'm not going to do that right here, right now, but know that that is an option as you move forward in your VDW journey as well. By clicking on next, now you're going to show, hey, Mr. Customer, here are the selections that I've selected. So remember when I was selecting the scenarios, I selected Discover Insights to identify trend, manage client privacy and security. These are the scenarios that I've selected. Are these aligned to you, Mr. Customer, as the conversations that you want to have? Now, here's a tip. When we think about these scenarios, if you're short on time, and when I mean short on time, roughly an hour, say an hour and 30 minutes with the customer, we don't recommend any number more than 2, right? So, and you'll quickly realize why that is as we start to go into these conversations. So if you're short on time, I would recommend you sticking to a maximum of 2 scenarios. So you're going to have to make a conscious decision when you're talking to the customer and say, do you really want to click on this edit button, right? Because by clicking on this edit button, it's actually going to show you all of the scenarios again. And by showing them all of the scenarios, it becomes sort of a no-brainer, right? If I were BDM, of course I wanted to learn more about how do I maximize sales to improve my product, my bottom line, right? So there's some risk to that, but know that if you want to show that you can, but you have to judge based on the time that you have with the customer. So again, I'm going to stick with these 2, and I'm going to move forward and actually now start to have these high value activity discussion. Let's go in the first one. So the very first one is discover insights, right? And the way that we structure our high value scenario conversation is we always go from old to new. So here is the first scenario that we're going to talk about: discover insights into compliance data across banking operations. And you can see this is the old process. Does your process look like this, Mr. Customer? Does it go from step 1 to step 5? You can, right here is where you can customize your entire VDW to fit what you're listening for in the customer conversation, right? So if the customer says, "Hey, our process doesn't really look like this," fine. Let's not stick to this. Let's actually go ahead and customize the diagram and say, "Okay, so what does your process look like?" Right? And as this thing loads, this is real-time demo. There you go. So as this thing loads, you're going to see you can actually modify all of these boxes. You can add a step if you want to. You can change the color. You can change the text. So say that I'm going to change the text on this fifth box and say I'm just going to call it testing, just for the heck of it. And you can see that now box 5 says testing. So here is where, and I'm going to save the diagram and actually go back to the actual demo itself. Here is where you're going to capture that process. Now, here's also where you're going to spend a lot of time with the customer, because most of the time, as you start to engage with the customers in that regard, more and more problems will come up, right? So a lot of times when we do these VDWs at this point, I actually take a step back and let the customers kind of battle it out with themselves, right? Because you're very quickly going to see, well, this is not how the process works for me. This is how the process works for you. So there's a lot of that going on. So you're sort of becoming that consultant at that point, right? The facilitator to say, okay, let's all take a step back and let's look at the bigger picture, right? And like trying to capture that process. So here is where you're actually going to get sucked into a fairly deep conversation, because now you're letting the customers discuss how their current process look like. At the bottom of this page, you can also show them, if you want to, is what you need to do to be better, right? So there's these things that you can sort of check off on, do you want to be better at staying updated on financial news and global trends? There's also best in class and business impact. But more importantly is capturing that process and truly understanding what is the pain that the customer is going through today. That is going to be the key on this page. And then that is when you contrast with, as I move forward, with a new process, or what we call the simplified process, right? Again, the simplified process goes from, step 1 through step 5. You can also customize the diagram to better fit the customer's pain point, and then actually solving those pain points with Office 365. So you can show them what is that simplified process is. And at the bottom of the simplified process, you can see there's 3 different columns. The very left column that you see here is their value realization calculation. So it gives you sort of a very quick idea of what your annual saving is going to be. We're going to actually go into the VOO and actually get a little bit deeper than just looking at this value realization calculation here. But the other thing is I do want to call out is explore CIE. So remember in the beginning when I was setting it up, I said, yes, let's go ahead and schedule a CIE. By clicking on explore CIE, it will actually take you to the CIE landing page, and then you're going to actually get a instantaneous virtual CIE where you can then show the customer, hey, we just talked about all these processes from old to new. Let me show you in the CIE itself what I mean, right? So that is when it becomes real for the customer to be able to see real time. Oh, this is what you're talking about. This is how you can collaborate. You can use SharePoint and actually go into Delve and find the right information and collaborate with people through Skype. This is all what that means. So that is where it becomes a really cool and effective 1-2 punch, if you will. In the middle column here is where we call out some of the products and capabilities, right? So in order for you to become better and be better in this process, these are the capabilities that you need. And at the very right-hand side, you're going to see a little bit more information around the value your business gets. And again, we provide the Forrester TEI study for the customers as well. You can download these right off the bat and actually share with the customers. No harm, no harm in doing that either. So I'm going to click on next for now. I'm not going to go into the CIE portion of it. The next one is now going to be that second scenario that we had talked about, managed client privacy. So this is now second and last scenario that I had picked. And again, you go through the same process, right? So you let them converse around, hey, what is the process look like currently in terms of how you think about client privacy? And you can also show them here is where the simplified process may look like for you. From step 1 to step 4. And again, these are the capabilities that you need and the value your business gets. So here is where the end of that high value activity discussion is, right? And again, you can most likely see this part will take the majority of that VW because you're allowing your customers to provide you with what their current process is, and that conversation typically always takes quite a while to finish, and hence our recommendation is if you have only 60 or 90 minutes with the customer, don't pick more than 2 scenarios because at the end it becomes very rushed. Let's go ahead and continue on the VDW journey, and we're going to now go into the implementation chevron. The way we think about implementation priority is we give you 3 different criteria. It starts from adoptionability to technical complexity and business impact. And this is something that is, these 3 criteria is something that we often hear on why customers are not making the change, right? So we put these in to let the customers sort of value, hey, based on what we've all talked about today, what do you think is the adoption ability? What do you think is the complexity of the technical aspect to making the change? And then we ask you to quantify that, 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. And basically, it's just a numerical game at this point, right? So if you think about discover insights, how, adoption ability, let's go with 4, 3, 2. And then for manage client privacy, let's go with 2, 1, 1. You can see that the number that I click on, it will basically sum up at the very right-hand side, 9 and 4. And if I were to click on next, it's then going to say, well, my priority number 1 then should be the highest number, right? Because this is the most critical to the business. So in this case, my priority number 1 should be to implement how we think about discover insights. And it's going to load. Get real-time demo. This one shows me implementation priority for number 2, manage client privacy and security. There should be a number 1 that had happened first right here. So the very first thing that it should have shown me was discover insights was implementation priority number 1. And then again, implementation priority number 2 is the managed client privacy. Again, it's based on the quantified value that the customer provides. And at this point, then you get to the end of the VDW. Here at the end of the VDW, there's a couple things that I do want to point out. There's a full workshop report that is in PowerPoint. It basically implements and incorporates everything that we've talked about with the customer today. It puts in a PowerPoint format that actually will help you provide to the customer back as a recap, if you think about it in that sense. There's also something called the personalized business proposal that I'm going to open up for you. And it gives you a very nice looking Word document that outlines in words basically what we have talked about today, right? So I'm going to open it up and show you what it looks like. This is the personalized business proposal is something that we got a lot of really positive feedback for. And basically, again, here's how it looks like when you open it up. It puts into a nice Microsoft Word file and basically gives you, all of the information that we've talked about today. All the way from an introduction to these are the scenarios that we've picked and talked about, all the way down to a quick little graph, even on the total cost of ownership as well at the very bottom. Um, so this gives you a very easy way to say, hey, Mr. Customer, here's the proposal that we have. Let me give you, and you can, by the way, you can also edit any of these, right? So before you send this out directly, you can take a look at this and say, hey, recommended next steps, maybe value calculator. That's great. But maybe let's have a follow-up conversation with your CFO to go much more detail on the numbers, right? So there's things that you can make edits to on this proposal before you send it out. And we found this to be a very effective tool for the sellers and partners to take to the customer and say, here you go, here's everything that we've talked about. And then at the end, there's some follow-ups that we're going to do with you. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. And again, some of the other things, supporting documentations, the TEI studies, because I clicked on banking and capital markets, you can see the TEI study right here. Again, all of these information, all of the things that we've talked about today and the things that we've shown you, you can share with the customers directly as well. So there's no privacy issue. There is absolutely everything is shareable with the customer. Okay, so this is the end of VDW, right? And we typically say at the end of the VDW, then what you want to do is schedule a CIE if you don't have a CIE already set up with the customer, because at that point, then it becomes CIE gives you that chance to really say, hey, let me show you what the art of the possible is. I'm going to actually skip the CIE part because I do believe most of you probably have some experience with CIE, but I want to show you very quickly the value of Office Calculator. And as I load this, Michael, is there any questions so far that we want to address as we transition to VOO?
No questions right now, Paul, that I wasn't able to answer. And so you can
Okay.
go ahead, but just a reminder to everybody on the call, just go ahead and type any questions that you have in your messages window, and we can get those answered. Thanks.
Awesome. So what I'm going to do now is this page should look very familiar to you. This is the Business Value Program homepage, right? And this is also where I had added an activity, the Value Discovery Workshop. But rather than adding a VDW now, I'm going to go to a Value Calculator. The Value Calculator gives you three different calculators that you can use. There's the enterprise product, there's the standalone calculators, and then there's the value realization calculators. They all serve a little bit different purpose, but what we're going to focus on today is the enterprise product. So we're going to go in and take a look at this, but know that there's two other ones that you can use. The standalone calculator gives you a very standalone cost benefit analysis on a very specific workload like Power BI or Cloud PBX or PSTN conferencing. So it's a very specific thing that if you want to prove the value of say, PSTN domestic calling, then yes, you can use the standalone calculators to do that. But keep in mind that it doesn't take into account of the broader Microsoft solution that we have as well. The Microsoft Value Realization Calculator is one where it's based on the scenarios that you picked, and use the TEI study to create a cost benefit analysis for you based on the scenarios. This one is a little bit more high level, right? So if you think about the scenario that we had picked, this is a managed client privacy, right? So managed client privacy could be a very high level cost benefit analysis in that perspective. And very quickly, the conversation then will go, okay, I get that, Paul, that there's cost and there's benefit in managing client privacy, but how does this map to my company? So that is when we have to go into the enterprise product analysis right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And again, it's going to ask me, who is the contact that you want to add? I'm just going to go ahead and select myself without adding a new one, and then click on next. And what it's going to then ask me is, as a Lowe's, what it's going to ask me is some basic information about the company, right, that you're talking to. So what is the industry that it's in? Let's just stick with banking and capital markets for now. You can also select different countries, right? Depending on, who the customer is and where they're based, you can select different countries. And what that does is it will create the exchange rate for you as well. So I'm going to stick to United States and click on next. Now it's going to ask me for the profile of the company, right? So what is the solution that you're trying to sell? Now, again, here in the value of Office Calculator, becomes a very SKU and product centric conversation, right? So we start with VDW, which is scenario based, and then you show them with CIE. Now with VOO, it's all about the dollar sign, right? At this point. And so what I'm going to do is select, well, what I'm going to pitch them. Let's just say Office 365 Plan E5, and it's going to give you the monthly price per user, and it's going to ask you what is the initial users for year one. And let's just say 2,000, right? 2,000, and then you can add in additional users. And I'm going to go ahead to the bottom because I selected E5. Of course, the Power BI is included. There's PSD and conferencing. These are included as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Calculate. And by clicking on Calculate, it's going to give you a nice page where it basically outlines all of the costs and all of the benefits. So let's go through that real fast. You can see that there's the ROI analysis based on what we had selected and based on the number of people that we've put in. There's the total cost, there's the total benefits, and you can dive deeper into what does that total cost look like, right? And what does that benefits look like? So for instance, you get the hard benefits as well as the soft benefits, right? And if you keep scrolling down a little bit, it's going to give you the cost as well in terms of, what is the cost to implementing something? What is the cost to AD federation as well? So it gives you everything here. Now, again, most of the time, customers are okay with this. There's always some customer that says, well, I don't believe in the value that you're showing me here, right? So for instance, let's just call it, let's go down to cost. Professional services, let's call it professional service out. Right here, why is professional service, is that little, I don't even know what color this is, but why is it so high, right? It doesn't make sense. Why, Paul? Why is it so high? So here is where you're going to have to go into the Excel spreadsheet and actually play with the data a little bit and show them what that looks like, right? And you can edit everything right here. You can modify the assumptions directly right here on the page, or you can go into the ROI calculation. So I'm going to click on, actually, like a true kitchen show, I have something already prepped for. But if I were to click on this ROI calculation, then it's going to open up an Excel spreadsheet for me that will look like something like this. And this is a very heavy calculator spreadsheet that you can use. You can download today if you want to. And the way that we structure this calculation, this Excel spreadsheet is you have a start page right here on the left-hand side. Again, some of the required inputs are what is the company name, what industry they're in. If they're not in banking and capital, you can do some other one. I'm going to stick with banking and capital for now, and I'm going to stick with the U.S. You can quickly see at the bottom there are different tabs. There's the basic inputs, there's the standard inputs, and then there's the advanced inputs. All of these basically will go much more and more and more detail into each one of these. So starting with the enterprise basic inputs, here is where I had selected. You can see that there's Office 365 E5 plan. If you want to change it, you can. And here's the original 2,000 users that I had selected, right? So this is that sort of that basic level, if you will, on how we think about the ROI calculations. You can modify any of these if you want to. Any of the yellow highlighted cells are the places where you can actually change the value. Now, again, for customers, most of the time, these will be okay. But for the ones that, become a little bit more suspicious, if you will, and they want to see more, you can go into the standard inputs. And here is where you can now select a lot of different things, right? So we provide you with server and data center inputs, employee cost inputs, right? So workdays per year, you can literally change workdays per year. If you're in Europe, this might be 220 days rather than the 250. You can look at deployment inputs, licensing inputs. So it gives you a lot more flexibility right here to say, hey, how do I think about all of these inputs with regards to the customers themselves, right? And if the customers really want to go even deeper, they can go into the events, benefits, and cost tabs, right? So for the events benefits, what they can look at is literally, they'll go into section by section. So hardware, avoided server hardware metric, right? So this is number of users and gives you the calculation on how we think about it for starting from 2,000 users and how it all trickles down to everything that we've shown you on the when we were back in the VOO calculation page, right? So it gives you hardware, reduce end user computer refresh costs. So all of these is right here for the customers to play with, or for you to actually do some work with the customer as well. If you go to the advanced cost inputs, you do the same thing, but repeating the process for cost rather than for benefits, right? So, for instance, labor metric, right? Number of internal FTEs and number of months, you can edit all of this. Very quickly, let me take a step back and say this. Very quickly, you're going to realize as you start to play with this is very complex. And it's complex for a number of reasons, but the biggest one is if the customer wants to see how all of these numbers came about, there's a way to do that, right? And I would say about 80 to 90% of the customers, this is perfectly fine because you've already sold them on the value, right? Assuming you've already done the VDW piece to it and you've shown them in CIE, this is how it looks like. Most of the time, they're going to say, okay, I get it, Paul. You know, that's great. Let's make sure that we talk to the right stakeholders and sell them on the value of this, right? So most of the time, these will be okay. But for the customers that, you know, that last 10, 20% of the customers that actually become a little bit more skeptical on where you come up with the numbers, we do provide you with the spreadsheet that you can go in and modify to your heart's content and be able to look at all of these in much greater detail should you need to. So that is the VOO piece to it, right? And again, this is the sort of that last piece to our business value programs where we say, you know, here you go, here is the total cost, here's the benefit that you're going to be able to get in 3 years return. And this is again that sort of that 1, 2, 3 punch on the very end that says we've already listened to your pain, we've shown you how Office 365 can solve your pain points. And you're going to now get the benefits out of this as well by looking at the actual numbers. One last thing that I do want to share with you is CIE. I didn't get a chance to actually show you CIE. I won't walk you through the CIE session itself. There are a number of other trainings that we can do for CIE, and I know that the US team has a bunch of different trainings as well for that, and I'm happy to give you more information on that. But let me show you what the CIE, virtual CIE looks like right now with the last couple minutes, and I'll make sure that I leave about 5 minutes for any questions that there are. So if I do an add-in activity, I can do a customer immersion experience right now, right here, right? So I do a virtual session, and again, it's going to ask me who are you doing it with? Now I'm going to do tryout and click on next. And what this is going to do is it's going to start spinning up the process of creating a CIE experience for me, right? And as this loads, it's going to ask me, well, what is the industry, right? So again, same industries that we've seen before. I'm going to just stick with banking and capital markets. And then it's going to ask me, what scenarios are you trying to drive for? Let's just stick with one of them, discover insights to identify trends. And I'm going to click on next. There you go. I'm going to say, when is your session today? And do you want to add additional features? Let's not add additional features. And now it's going to actually start to create that remote desktop experience. It's going to actually generate a virtual CIE. So again, the point I want to make here is this is instantaneous. This is what we consider virtual CIE. And for those of you who have customers in all over the country or even all over the world, this is a very quick and easy way to show them the value of Office 365 as well as the broader Microsoft solution, right? So here is the virtual CIE information, and here are some of the guides that you can look at. Because I had selected banking, it shows me the banking guide that you can go through. If I go to remote desktop, I can select out of 20 personas on what I want to become, right? And you can select one of them. Typically, the facilitator is the Karen Berg, and you can give out the 19 other personas to your customers to actually let them go into the same sandbox with you as well. So if you select Karen Berg and you click on connect, you can literally go into the virtual CIE instance itself. So by typing the password, and the password is all on the same page. It's right here. It's Then now I can connect. Literally, it will now pop me. I don't even know if I'm sharing my screen once I'm in here. Um, Now I'm in the virtual CIE mode where, again, if 19 other customers want to join you, they can join you right now, right here in the same sandbox, and you can show them the power of Microsoft solution right here in a very safe environment. So um, apparently my computer is not that strong. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of here before it crashes my entire thing. And let me just exit out. But that is the virtual CIE. So to recap everything that we've talked about, we start with business value program. And I'll go ahead and let me just anchor the final conversation on this part. We've talked about a lot of different things, right? Business value program is made up of VDW to CIE to VOO, right? So I'm going to stop on this slide and just sort of recap on everything that we talked about. So using the VDW, you're really using that to listen and understand what is the pain point and what is the existing process that your customer is going through, as well as talk to them about what that new process can look like. And then you jump into the CIE to show them, hey, this is real. This is what we can actually do for you to change the process that you have. Once you've sold them on sort of that art of the possible, use the value of office calculators to drive home the point on cost benefit analysis. And that is the VOO. And altogether, this is what that business value program is all about. And this is what we consider as work being reimagined. So with that said, let me stop right there. Michael, is there any questions out in the chat box?
Hi, Paul. Yes. So great presentation, great overview. We have a question from Stephen, and he asks, are these tools effective for SMBs, or are these really directed more toward enterprise customers?
Oh, well, that's a great question. I didn't address that when I was going through. So the way we think about it is cross segments, right? And it's cross segments because the TEI study that we use, and in fact, let me just go on this slide. It is on this slide. The TEI study that we use do surface SMB data as well. So if you were talking to SMB customers, as you go into VDW, remember how you had to select the number of employees? If you put in 50, the entire cost benefit analysis is now going to switch to an SMB model. So absolutely, you can talk to the SMB customers with these. Now, the way that I would think about SMB customers will be a little bit different because by nature, SMB customers are different from enterprise customers who have a little bit more leeway and flexibility in terms of checkbooks and a lot of different things. But absolutely, we've seen successes in SMB stories because these tools are built cross segments. You can definitely use them with SMB.
Great, appreciate that. And then, so transform.office.com, and if people want to try this out, can they just kind of spin up a test one? Is there anything special that they need to do?
You bet. You bet. The only thing that partners need to have is an MPN ID. If you have that, you're golden. You can go in today and literally set up a new account or use the Contoso test account. If you don't see the Contoso test account, you can literally spin up a new account by creating a new account that you're going to see as you start to go into the dashboard itself. And by creating a new account, you can use all of these tools today and you can try them out. In fact, my recommendation has always been, if you're going to talk to a customer, you have never used these tools before, make sure you familiarize yourself with these tools first and actually do a dry run with a colleague of yours and actually go through the entire journey before you go into the customer's office to do these. So yes, absolutely, you can create a test account and start playing with it today if you want to.
Awesome, thanks. Well, that's all we have, and so thank you so much for taking us through that. I love the calculators, and I love the VDW. And I just love the way it's tailored and personalized, and how you can continue to make your own adjustments as needed, and the proposals. So great stuff. Thank you so much for coming on today. And thank you all who joined. And this is going to be our last call for our fiscal year. And so please stop by. Getting some one more question maybe we can take. But anyway, we'll see you back in September. There are no calls planned for the next 2 months. And but please continue to join the conversation on our Yammer group. And so a comment, let's see, that just came in. So it says, I guess this is mostly focused on new customer acquisitions. What about existing on-premise customers looking to help justify migrations to Office 365? Many existing scenarios will be similar, but not the same. Any thoughts on that, Paul?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the way that I would say the most effective things that we've seen before is actually with existing customers. So believe it or not, the tools work beautifully with existing customers. And the way that I would position this would be everything that you've seen today and heard today is modifiable, right? It's editable. Don't treat the entire thing as, hey, I have to follow this stringent guidelines and the wording, the verbiage that's shown, right? You can edit the entire VDW to fit what your customer is going through. So if it's an existing customers, say it's coming up for renewal and whatnot, and or it's talking about specifically migration to the cloud, you can tailor that conversation to a T to fit that within the VDW. So think about it more as a framework that you have to fit your customer's need into, rather than as a very linear stringent guidelines that you have to follow. So that's a great question. We actually do use this with existing customers, and we've seen actually the most of the positive effects coming from renewals and existing customers who are thinking now about migration to the cloud.
Okay, great. And then one last question, and then we'll close out with this. And I kind of agree with this sentiment. I know that there's training for CIE. Is there ever going to be any live training for partners on this, on what you just kind of presented? It might be great to have some workshops around this.
Workshops with real customers, or literally going through
just some facilitated training to help partners be able to deliver this. Any training on that?
Yeah, no, definitely. So we are thinking about right now, as Microsoft goes into FY18. We're thinking about how do we set up some trainings around VDW. There are trainings around CIE, you're absolutely right. I think right now we're thinking about logistically and tactically how do we do that. And once we get more information, Michael, why don't I give you that later on, and then you can help me spread the message?
You bet. All right, we better close out this call. And also just by the way, Paul, we're getting some several comments, people saying they really enjoyed the presentation today. So thank you so much.
You bet.
And enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you all. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.